What never works and can't be fired? That's right, the answer is BattlEye Anti-Cheat. So dudes, I'm G and I yap about Rainbow Six. Now the first question you might have is, why are you, a member of the woke mob, making a gun joke? And that's a really good point. Consult this diagram and it'll explain why. Rainbow Six Siege is in a very bad situation right now. And I think a lot of people have different ideas of how to fix it. But nobody can agree on the solution because everybody seems to fixate on a different problem. If you talk to one person, they'll tell you it's mainly the cheaters. If you talk to another person, they'll say rank 2.0. If you talk to one kind of person, they might say something about woke. Heck, you'll probably run into someone who will say it's all those things. For the purpose of this video, I made a step-by-step plan to get Rainbow Six up to a level that is competitive with the other contemporaries it is competing with. So, not trying to compete with a single-player $60 release, for example. I will talk about single-player content in this video for Siege, but I'm not going to make it the sole focus. I'm going to focus on its operation as a live service multiplayer game that it is. Again, this is a broken record for me at this point, but Siege is a live service game. There are people who are always going to be mad at that fact, and you will never please them. So you should not make an attempt to do so. You should make an attempt to make the game good for the people who will enjoy it. So here's how I would save Rainbow Six Siege. Number one, deal with the cheater problem. The number one issue with the game right now is the rampant cheating across all matchmaking modes, particularly the ranked system. Now, most of the complaints about ranked 2.0, which I covered in a video yesterday, would be null and void if there was an actual incentive to climb the ladder and learn how to play the game well. But the problem with that is that cheaters have removed that incentive. Imagine if every time you tried to play basketball at your local gym, somebody was allowed to just run around and troll and just like smack the ball out of your hand, tackle people, just be a pain in the ass, right? Just ruin the experience, just be an annoying asshole. And the staff was powerless to stop them. Every time you went up to the staff, they'd say, yeah, we had security, but, just, it's not up to the task right now. It's just kind of unfortunate. You look at them like, what? Dude, I'm paying money here. Like, I'm paying money for your services so that I can go to this gym. Like, what are you talking about? You can't deal with it. That's what it feels like playing Rainbow Six Siege right now. People have spent money to buy this game, and the only content that they get is this live service multiplayer component. And that service has been ruined. Cheaters make every match feel suspect. So good players can and do hide cheats. It's a misconception that good players don't cheat. Good players do cheat. Blatant cheaters who are trolling can waste your time. But a closet cheater, right, whether they're awful at the game or not, can make you feel like you're going insane. And they can make it hard to self-assess your skill or what you did wrong to get killed. So for instance, a cheater can have information that they normally shouldn't have or would not be capable of getting on their own or with a coordinated stack. But then they kill you, and then it's like, okay, the way they took the gunfight didn't look strange, but you just have a sense that they have information that they shouldn't have, right? You ever heard your random or your friend go, oh my gosh, he just knows? Right? Like, that's where that feeling comes from. And with cheaters in the game right now, it's really difficult to tell when somebody actually has good game sense or when they're freaking cheating. So the game is competitively focused, and when you give people matches that have competitive integrity, that's where your bread and butter is going to be. So this should be Ubisoft's number one focus right now. Now, I'm not saying that it isn't. I'm actually going to elaborate a little bit more and probably allude to some things that I think people should be aware of. But the ultimate bottom line here, guys, is that new content doesn't matter, right? Operation New Blood not having any content, one of the reasons that I didn't really talk about it and yap about it too much, aside from just, not really feeling like I was going to say anything that nobody else had already said. The other reason I didn't really talk about it much is that it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if they add if they go back to year 2, right? If they add 2 operators, 2 new guns, 2 crazy gadgets, a brand new map. It doesn't matter. They could have the most content-rich season we've ever had, and it won't matter because the cheater situation is completely and totally out of control. So new content does not matter if this issue is not fixed. I do not play the game on console, apparently. Thank you, Jinxie. Thank you, console. Without that, we'd probably be just completely dead in the water. So it doesn't matter how well the techniques are applied when you're cooking a dish, right? If you make a stir fry with rotten ingredients, the food is ruined. Cheaters are a bacteria or a mold ruining the food, and it's spread throughout the stock. We gotta fix it. All right, so we've identified the problem. Now we have to make a plan. How do we actually address it? Here's the thing. Ubisoft does have a plan. They are addressing it, but they do not have the tools, they do not have the equipment or the engineering to deal with it efficiently. That is the issue. The issue isn't, oh, we need an anti-cheat. We do have an anti-cheat. Ubisoft does not have the manpower to deal with it, and the infrastructure for the game is very vulnerable. An old codebase elicits tons of issues. There are legacy problems, outdated security measures that are easier for cheaters to exploit. The code has vulnerabilities that cannot be addressed quickly and efficiently because the devs have to work around this big mess, right? This barbed wire of code could easily interact with a number of other systems that they don't really understand. And you also have programmers that are coming onto the project that don't have the guidance of older programmers who might leave, so the information that they have is limited. So it is a doubly afflicting problem. Not only do the cheaters have more avenues to cheat, the devs have less avenues to counteract them. So it is a cyclical issue. The only way to fix this is to move the game over to a completely different framework. That requires you to build everything from the ground up. That means all the assets have to be retextured, remodeled, reanimated. Everything has to be redone. Absolutely everything. The maps, the character models, the weapons, the skins for all those things. We have 72 characters now, I believe. Don't include the guns and the gadgets. And that's still a massive undertaking. That is something that needed to start happening a long time ago. With COVID and the timing of that, I believe Rainbow Six as a live service game got caught doing too many small tactical things and needed to think strategically a while ago. That's why I think by the time these new guys got involved in year 8, the effect still feels like it's a million years away from now. This is ultimately why I believe the pace of the content started to slow down. This idea that they could have kept doing the 2 operators with 2 guns and a new map every 3 months forever was never going to be sustainable. What ended up happening here was Ubisoft Pavloved their community into thinking they could do it forever because they didn't give any indication at the time that they couldn't do it forever. But the reality of it is all the same. That model was never going to last, and it's remarkable that it lasted as long as it did. The common talking point you hear is Ubisoft should make a new anti-cheat. Ubisoft should hire a new anti-cheat. It doesn't matter if Ubisoft does either of those two things because they don't have enough people to keep up with the cheater war. Siege is a big target, and I believe the reason it is a big target is because the code base for this game is fucking ancient history. It is so old. Please remember that this game is going to be at its 10th anniversary soon, okay? This game released December 2015. I wasn't even in college yet. I just graduated high school, right? Call of Duty, Gears, all those games. Can't Ubisoft just get off their ass and figure it out? They've had plenty of time to figure this out. Why is it taking so long? The reason it's taking long is because this is a strategic problem. Why do I sound like Jocko? I don't sound like Jocko Willink. Obviously, I don't sound like Jocko Willink. But why am I quoting Jocko Willink? I'm quoting Jocko Willink because I think the way that he describes the difference between strategic and tactical problems is an interesting way to look at why Siege is in the state that it's in right now. So I'm going to play a clip.
Do the strategic things first. Do the long-term projects before you do what is due today or what is due tomorrow. I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to spend the first hour or 45 minutes or 30 minutes or 90 minutes focused on things that will pay off in the long run. And then I can do the things that need to be done today.
Great video. I'll leave a link to it in the description, a bit from Jocko's pod. But the point he's trying to make is that it is a lot easier to peck away at something that needs to be done over the course of 4 months by allocating an hour here, right, every single day, than trying to fix it all at once when you get up to the deadline. Because by the time you get to the deadline, you're not going to be able to actually work on the problem because there's all these other things, all these other preliminary issues that needed to be sorted out first before they could actually get to work on whatever they needed to do, whether that was an in-house anti-cheat, whether that was a new code base for the game. That project needed to start a long time ago. And I think it started relatively late in the life cycle of the game. And that's why we're all just kind of sitting around going, why is this taking forever, bro? I believe COVID really hit the development, like actual workflow at Ubisoft really hard. It hit the whole industry pretty hard. But from what I can tell with the drama that did end up getting to the press, that drama among COVID drama, I believe Ubisoft was really just strapped for decision-making bandwidth, and they were focused on content. And so the new team of people that they brought in around year 8, right, they might have had all the best ideas in the world, but even at this point, right, we haven't even reached 2 years yet. It doesn't matter how long it takes, right, a year and a half in the span of game development, in the span of a big company like Ubisoft. That's not a lot of time. A year and a half for these companies is, just like comparatively for us, right, the way that we think about it in our everyday tasks, that's, not nearly as big as it may seem. So when the current slate of Ubisoft devs say, we want to get to 100 operators, is that like, I don't know what people think they mean when they say that. Do people think that they're lying? Do people think that they're just, faking it until they're making it? I really don't think that they're going to go out and say something like that unless they have a plan to follow through with it. Because as far as I can tell, if you don't include this season that I'm playing right now, and if you don't include the recruits as new operators, the last time that we didn't add an operator in a particular content patch was Operation Health, and that was over 7 years ago. So New Blood, this particular season, is the exception, not the norm, out of the vast breadth of content seasons that they've added to the game. That doesn't mean that it's not indicative of a bad trend. I understand the fear and trepidation here when they look at a season like Operation New Blood and you go, what the heck is going on? Have they run out of ideas? What's up? I think that is a fair knee-jerk reaction to have. But from what I've read from Ubisoft devs and from what I've talked to Ubisoft devs about, I believe Operation New Blood ended up the way it is because it is a maintenance patch. I don't think that they could say out loud that it was a maintenance patch because of the nature of online social media discourse and how much more rotten it has become over the past 4 years in particular. I think because of, just the lack of useful feedback that they were going to get, they just didn't say it outright. They didn't say this is Operation Health 2.0 because what would they gain from it? One, and two, even if they did make the adjustments that they needed to make, look at how Alexander Karpazis talks about the anti-cheat, right? They had a whole thing, there goes my time card app. They had a whole thing at the beginning of year 9 where they said every season, we're going to give you an anti-cheat update. How much good has that done? They make an anti-cheat update, they say we're working on it, but it doesn't matter because the actual ground game hasn't really changed that much. So people aren't convinced. At a certain point, you can only yap so much. I think Ubisoft finally, with this particular season, and I could be wrong on this, we could get to, the rest of year 9, and it could be a load of nonsense, right? But I believe with this particular season, they wanted to slow the influx of assets put into the thing, right? The plane is overloaded. It's too heavy. There's too much crap in the plane. We can't take off. They wanted to slow down the amount of crap that's being injected, and this is their solution for the time being. I don't know what that's going to look like for the next season. I don't know what that's going to look like for year 9, season 4. I don't know what that's going to look like for year 10. But based off of my best guess, I believe they have a long-term plan, and they're not really talking about it because why would they? No one's going to believe them, and everyone's just going to assume that they're acting about it in bad faith anyway. So that assumes that step 2 is done. Fix the code base. Now you have a modern client. You have modern infrastructure to work with. What do? Well, there's a couple of things that you can do. The main thing that I would focus on, and this is something I've been very bullish on that I've talked on a lot with my podcast with Bikini Bodhi, is I think that Rainbow Six needs to offer something that is a different sort of flavor from the typical sort of, PvP competitive style game that they have. The reason that I think that Ubisoft can leverage this is because they are working on some pretty interesting tech with the AI Defender playlist right now. And I'm assuming what would eventually be an AI attacker playlist in the future. Ubisoft is doing stuff with video game AI and machine learning that I don't think a lot of companies are doing. At least, maybe, not if we're going to compare Ubisoft Montreal to a small indie studio, that's not fair. But I still think, based off of what I've seen, Ubisoft is still, they still have the wherewithal to understand they have something unique, and they are developing it. What that's going to look like, I don't know. But what I'm bullish on is a PvE-style content side dish. Extraction didn't work. I understand that. I believe the reason Extraction didn't work was because of the subject material and the theme and the marketing. I think the whole alien invasion thing was not a particularly compelling angle for an organization like Rainbow. When you went from the esports tournament thing with Harry to aliens invading, that really took a lot of, it took a lot of the wind out of the sails, and it removed a lot of the faith in terms of the, seriousness at which the devs were approaching the project. Because at the end of the day, these units, right, that are depicted in the game, like the GIGN, GSG9, and even other organizations that are a little bit more fictional to varying degrees. Organizations like these all exist in reality. So at the end of the day, the game is modeled off of certain aspects that exist in reality. And regardless of what you think about, the old school Tom Clancy audience, I guess, they were here first, right? Tom Clancy had a particular kind of base, had certain kinds of expectations in the earnestness of how the license was approached. And Rainbow Six ended up losing that with Siege, especially around, 2017 to 2018 when they started to get a little bit more fantastical with various elements. I understand why they did it. Not everything stays the same forever. I'm not saying that it even should have stayed the same forever, but I think there is a healthy middle ground. And I think the team that came on board in year 8 recognized that, and that's why they started adding characters like Deimos, and why I'm pretty sure they're going to add a character like Galanos in the next patch. That's my guess anyway. The thing is, I'm not convinced on the whole, live service, let's explain the lore of the live service arena shooter characters. There's a game that has been floating around for a little bit recently called Conquered. They have spent so much time trying to flesh out the lore and the world building for the Groot guy and the giant, Winston knockoff, I guess. I mean, guys, can we please, give me a break? The reason you can't really do this with a new IP, you can't just release this, oh, hey, here's multiplayer only with some dialogue sometimes, and here's this story and lore for you to care about, is because it's completely fictional, and I have no frame of reference to go off of. You have to kind of do some, actual writing here and convince me to care about these characters. With a license like Rainbow, people are already familiar with these organizations. They're already familiar with the general, vibe and energy that these kinds of organizations should be putting out, and what the people in these organizations should be like, the way that they behave, what kind of different motivations they might have to be involved in the organizations that they're involved in. And people also have this idea in modern day where they think that because there were dated conceptions about how these organizations operated in, security communities across the world, they think that it should remain dated forever. So now you have an opportunity to tell a plausible, real story that represents different people that normally haven't had a lot of representation, but in a way that feels authentic. And I think that's a really interesting opportunity. If you approach it correctly, if you don't do it in a token way, then if people have a problem with it, that's their problem, not yours. A lot of people will look at me saying this and go, this is hypocritical. You're so, you try to back up the Siege lore all the time. Right, because I think there's actually material here that you could make into something. I didn't think the tournament arc with Harry was perfect. I thought that there were a lot of problems with it. You could have done something with it. You could have had Harry in the back, you know, at Mother Base or whatever. He would organize the op. Let's say you you had a dedicated like $60 campaign. Let's just pretend. Let's take a time machine, go back to 2008 for a second, okay? We have a $60 Rainbow Six release, and Harry gets introduced back then. So we have the whole planning phase, like the original games. Harry picks the ops. He has the map. He tells you, I need you to insert from here. I need you to insert from helicopter here, rappel in here, right? Go through this window. Imagine being able to plan out an op like the analyst, like a station chief that's actually working on the thing, right? Actually has the blueprints in front of them. And you can allocate gadgets, maybe build an AI system, kind of like Republic Commando, where a fire team lead could get the different operators to do different things. That's the beauty of the game. That's the magic of the game that we're trying to emulate in a multiplayer environment. It just turns out that, that people are, annoying and they can be difficult to reason with. So sometimes the multiplayer component doesn't really sell that kind of fantasy. Another aspect here that you could really lean into is a modular sort of custom games system where you give your players more options in terms of, just goofy stuff, right? Like give them more tools in the toolbox, give them more stuff in the sandbox to actually play around with and adjust to their liking. So that way they can actually, invite their friends into these communities and get little cultures going unto themselves. That kind of modularity and ability to, have multiple audiences is what made Halo 3 work so well back in the day. I still think, to this day, Siege has the potential to have that kind of reach. I think that Siege has the ability to make something for everybody. They can have a component that's competitive for the esports sweats. They can have a component that's a little bit more laid back and casual. They could have single player fare or co-op fare. There's so many different things that you can do with these mechanics because the mechanics and the gadgetry, right? What we have here, this base is really, really good. But the problem is that the infrastructure for Rainbow Six itself is one, so tied to this multiplayer component solely, and two, it has to be tied to the multiplayer component solely because the code base is so old, but they can't do anything else with it. So that's probably part of the reason why they made Rainbow Six Extraction as a separate thing, because I doubt that they could inject it into Siege. I'm sure that if my time card app would shut up, then I would be able to record something without beep boop going on. And then I wouldn't have to go back into the thing and then cut it out with the spectrogram editor, which I won't do because I've made like 5 different cuts of the same recording. The point is, they could do everything, right? You could have your cake and eat it too. But as it stands right now, we just don't have the tools in our toolbox to do it with. So, prioritize your problems. The cheater thing, that needs to be fixed ASAP. Get in front of that. In order to fix the cheater thing, you need to have the infrastructure fixed first. So fix the infrastructure, fix the cheater thing, and then focus on doing other things with the modularity of the sandbox and other kinds of ways people can interact with the game and interact with the Rainbow Six mechanics, not just the Siege mechanics that everybody can appreciate and understand and get behind. So this video was yappy and sometimes a little bit long-winded, but I hope I got my main points across. The ultimate goal here, really, guys, is just make a Rainbow Six that everybody can appreciate, and I think that you can do that. We just have a lot of other crap that we got to figure out first. So I'm going to get in front of my strategic objectives today, as Jocko advised, and hit the frickin' gym, because the gym's about to close. And I'll see you guys in the next video tomorrow. Deuces.